thing I want to share too, and I don't know if anything like this has ever happened to you. So I always felt like I was an upstanding Catholic. Never missed, I mean, unless I was like gravely ill, never missed Sunday Mass. Okay. I went to confession at Easter and Christmas, showed up on the holy days of obligation. But, and I thought like, wow, like I'm like a big time Catholic, right? And lo and behold, I'm doing the bare minimum. Okay. I'm doing the bare minimum. Right. But I felt like, wow, like I'm this upstanding Catholic. And then several years ago during Lent, like I always, with Lent, we always feel like, and which is coming up next Wednesday.
Yeah, very soon.
Ash Wednesday,
yeah,
on Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
I always, so many people think about what they can give up. But this Lent, when I was praying, Mary had kind of come over me and she's like, I want you to do the rosary daily. I was not saying, I had said rosaries before, but they were very, very infrequent and random. Mm-hmm. And so it was like, you are going to do a family daily rosary. So did it every day during Lent. And then, of course, when Lent's over, I can't stop doing the rosary. It was almost like a pressure. Yeah. Like, okay, I've got to keep with the rosary. And then it's like, it's 15 minutes of my time. Mm-hmm. And of course, we're human. There's sometimes like going into it, I'm like, oh, do I want to do the rosary? No, I don't want to do the rosary. But I love the feeling after I get my rosary in, right? So, but this is how quickly I was just moved to become like a lukewarm Catholic. I was a bare minimum Catholic. And that right there quickly escalated me. I was moved to start doing the first. So again, I'm only going to Mass on Sundays. Mm-hmm. And then I looked into the first 9 Fridays, the first Fridays, right, and the first 5 Saturdays, excellent, which you would be so surprised how many Catholics do not.
They don't know about it. They don't even know about that. They'll offer Mass on the first Saturday, but they won't say why it is.
Right.
It makes no sense.
So not that we have time to fully go into it, but I encourage all of you. I can't tell you how many Catholics don't know about this. Selfishly, the graces are abundant. The promises. Please look into the first 9 Fridays and the first 5 Saturdays. The first Fridays are devoted to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. The first Saturdays are devoted to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Going to church, going to confession, concentrating on the mysteries of the rosary. It's not hard at all, but please look into it. Everything you need to do, I recommend it to everybody. The graces that come from it are just astounding. Sure. So anyways, I was like really excited and I was really motivated selfishly because of the graces and the promises. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want everything attached to this. And this is easy. I can do 1 Friday a month, extra Friday and 1 Saturday. But I quickly was like, well, if I can go Friday, I can go Monday. So then I started quickly going a couple days a week. Good. And it just turned into, I was craving the Eucharist daily. Literally. And masses during the week are like 30 minutes. They're like daily mass is short. And when I had, when I worked for myself, I had the flexible schedule. I was able to go. And so it just came over me, John, so quickly, the craving for the Eucharist daily. And it's like one of those things, the more you get it, the more you want. Yep. And when you truly understand Jesus Christ is entering you, you're becoming one. It's like, how could you not want that as often as possible? And so, then I went to, I was going to confession once a month and I felt great about that. And then I noticed I needed it more. So then I was going bi-weekly. Now I try to go weekly. Padre Pio even encouraged people. Everyone needs a good dusting, even once a week. Mm-hmm. And I mean, my poor priest, truly, I would go every day if I could. I think I drive my priest nuts, but I would go every day if I could. It's just such a beautiful grace and it's such a great feeling. And the more you go, the more you want to stay on track.
Right.
Right. And what I loved is you were talking about something. We all have our vices. We're still struggling daily. We're not ever going to be perfect. And sometimes though, I feel we're all called to be saints. We're all called to become saints. And there's times I just get so weary and I'm like, that's so unobtainable. And I talk to my priest in confession each week. And a lot of times I have the same sins. And I'm like, I feel so down on myself. Like I really care. God knows my heart. I am trying so hard and I'm still falling. And he's like, that's the road to sanctifying grace. Because I do know sometimes when I'm falling, I'm getting up much more quickly. Or if something would have extended an hour, it was now like down to 3 minutes. Do you know what I mean? Just
Right.
certain sins and certain, like, even venial sins, just like falling and like struggling with something. I noticed, due to staying close to the sacraments, I am getting better. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And it's a hard indication to see. And I remember this book, Growth in Holiness, like frequency of sins isn't necessarily an indicator of how you're doing, because you might have more temptation when you're trying to get closer to Christ.
Yes.
Or your conscience biting you might mean that you're actually getting a little closer as well. But just doing those right things. And yeah, frequency of the sacraments, but reception of it properly and properly disposing yourself. I think that all makes sense. And what I try to incorporate in daily life is these four things. And I think if you have these four elements, you're going to be, it's getting you towards success. So mental prayer is the first thing. And that is when you talk to God and God talks to you. That's when you sit in silence, and it can start with just 15 minutes a day. It can be half hour. A lot of priests, most priests try to do an hour, a holy hour each day. But that is just where you're learning to understand God's voice. You can do it with some scripture. That's helpful. So that's just kind of one element where even if you're not getting anything out of it right there in the moment, you might get something later on that's revealed to you. So that's mental prayer. Then spiritual reading. And what spiritual reading does is you have these tried and true saints, these spiritual masters, these experts who can help inform you about God and the spiritual life in a better way than you ever would. And if you try to pray without doing spiritual reading regularly, you might just actually get in your mind and sort of justify your own thoughts. We all know that we can get in our minds. We can go through prior arguments we had with other people and see that, oh, this is why I'm right. But getting that spiritual reading in is a huge element. The rosary as well. Like so many Marian apparitions say, pray the rosary. Mary brought Jesus Christ into this world, and she helps still bring him to us and bring us to him. So that's a very powerful thing. And then an examination of conscience, which I usually, might try to do with night prayer. And that's where you review your day. You spend about just a few minutes. What did I do this morning? What did I do in the afternoon? What could I have done better? What did I do well? Let's ask God for forgiveness, and let's try to do better the next day. So if you kind of do those elements, that last one to throw in there will be penance. But I think if you do the mental prayer, you're doing these other things, the penance will kind of come, where you'll start to understand God's voice and what specific things he wants you to do penitentially.
Right. I love that. I love those suggestions.